Hello there, my name is Madison Rajat, and I read Ship Ablaze by Edward T. O'Donnell. This was New York's deadliest tragedy prior to 9/11. So, this happened just before the Titanic. And one of the surviving passengers on the General Slocum is quoted as saying that this didn't get all the media attention that the Titanic got because there were no famous people on it. This was merely a family picnic. So let's examine why this happened. The exact number of passengers who were on board that day will never truly be known because it was common practice back then to undercount how many people were boarding. This was done to fit more people on the boat and therefore make more money. So it's estimated that there was about 1,300 people on board and just over 1,000 of them died. So really only about 300 lived, which is a horrifying number. The lack of safety measures is what greatly contributed to this being such a disaster. The fire hoses on board had not been tested in 13 years, so they were dry rotted. When the water went through them, they simply burst. The life preservers were also well past their shelf life. The rotten jackets, in fact, drowned many people. You only knew how to swim or had been taught how to swim if you were elite and had the time and money to pursue swimming lessons. So a lot of these people didn't know how to swim, and they needed a life jacket in order to jump overboard and live. So these life jackets were full of cork. The rotted cork becomes like dirt and is very absorbent. So people were throwing on these life jackets, jumping overboard, thinking they were going to be buoyant. And then that cork absorbed all the water and became 20 pounds of dead weight. No fire drills had been performed in any of the tenure of the employees on board. So the employees didn't know what to do when a fire occurred, which is also what greatly contributed to this disaster. The initial employee who found the fire left the door to the fire room open, which just allowed continuing oxygen to fuel the fire. Whereas if he had been taught and knew to close that door, the fire would have stopped in that room and could have been extinguished. Additionally, the lifeboats had been secured to the boat and could not be released. The lifeboats clanging against the ship on a rough day was noted as being annoying by the captain, the crew, the passengers. So they had taken metal wire and secured these lifeboats to the ship. And now, when they needed them, they were unable to unsecure them. The initial fire room in the General Slocum was warm and dry, full of plenty of fuel, lots of dry hay. And then that door being left open just allowed oxygen to continue to go in and feed this inferno. The crew decided to stop fighting the flames when the situation became dire, and this just took it from crisis to catastrophe. And one of the best quotes in the book was, in 1904, fire had the upper hand. This left the passengers with the choice of being burned alive or drowning. So the captain had the right idea. He knew he needed to project calm in order to keep his crew and passengers calm. And so, although his mental fortitude was strong, his actual plan of action was not the best. Many psychologists state that when an individual is faced with disaster, they'll choose the riskiest course of action and refuse to deviate from it, even when continuing evidence shows this is the wrong decision. And the more hopeless the situation becomes, people are going to stick to this failing plan. He decided initially that he was going to go to North Brother Island, beach the boat there, and people would be able to jump to safety on the land. He passed plenty of embankments he could have beached the boat on getting to North Brother Island. His course of action to North Brother Island actually pushed the flames back to the stern where lots of people were hiding. So as passengers began to notice what was happening, group behavior set in and everybody disintegrated into panic and chaos. This caused people to act in antisocial and individualistic ways. A timely assertion of leadership could have prevented this panic. Some of the police officers tried to be leaders in this situation, but it was simply too little too late. As panic set in, individuals lost their humanity. People were pushed out of the way, slow grandparents were shoved, women were fainting due to the mere stress, children were being trampled, life preservers were being snatched off of women and children, people were biting each other, and just this really horrific scene. And so those who did survive were then haunted by the memories of everything they had seen and done on board. The impacts of the General Slocum disaster are unquestionable. President Roosevelt formed a federal commission to investigate, and the only one who faced criminal charges was the captain. He faced charges for manslaughter and negligence. So the ship company, the manufacturers, the fire inspectors, they all got off scot-free in this disaster. In the June 1904 issue of Fire and Water Engineering, they urged for increased onboard ship safety, fire protection, construction, onboard firefighting equipment, life preserver access, and actual fire safety inspections. Many critics at the time and in modern times do not believe that the captain's punishment was adequate. They believe that greater people should have been held responsible for this disaster because it truly wasn't just on the captain. The ship company had these lax regulations, the inspectors were being paid off. Everyone was at fault here, not just the captain. So, one really surprising policy change was that this disaster brought about the importance of swim lessons. The majority of people died in this situation simply because of their lack of ability to swim. If they knew how to swim, they could have jumped overboard and swam to safety, but not many of them knew how to swim. This caused school administrators and politicians to realize the importance of swimming. They had been really worried about the strain that swimming would place on women, so they didn't want to teach women to swim because of the strain, but also modesty was an issue at the time. So they began teaching women to swim out of water, which you can see in the photo here, and then protests brought about actual swim lessons for women eventually. In my opinion, the book was an extremely interesting read that detailed the tragedy and changes in maritime law that followed. I do agree that there could have been more information on the aftermath of the disaster and reform that occurred because of this disaster. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.